whether the Dolphin fan or the Dolphins generally should exercise moving Tyreek Hill. Is it in their interest? Are they really into doing it? My thinking is that if they traded Jalen Ramsey and they want, and Jalen Ramsey's easier to trade than Tyreek Hill, they're willing to move Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill has been a maybe slight negative net positive to what the Dolphins have done the last 3 seasons, however long he's been there. And he's been a good player, but his availability is now in question. His age is getting up there. We're sort of waiting to see what breaks first, the Dolphins or Tyreek Hill in terms of his age, health, the whole thing. And even if his off field, and we don't know how much of a pain he is off the field. So with all that stuff in the center of it, I'm surprised we haven't talked about it. Maybe people have. I haven't listened. But I think that this is a no-brainer if you wanted to kind of solve this drama. And by solving the drama, I mean get him off the team. And the hard part about trading Tyreek Hill is you got to find a suitor that, number one, wants to take Tyreek Hill, can utilize his services this year, and then on top of that, has something to give up. Well, if only there was and you also don't want to trade him inter-division. I mean, maybe inter-conference, but not inter-division for sure. So that eliminates some teams. If only there was a place where you could trade him in the other conference. And I'm surprised Moore hasn't, and there's words about whether the Washington Commanders are interested in making trades. But do the Washington Commanders say no if the Dolphins say, hey, we'll give you Tyreek Hill right now for Terry McLaurin and, let's say, a third-round pick? Do the Commanders say no to that? Do they really value a 29-year-old Terry McLaurin that is due for a multi-year extension over a Tyreek Hill under contract? An older Tyreek Hill? If there's one thing that the Commanders haven't necessarily showed fear about, it's about age. They brought in Bobby Wagner. That didn't bother them at all. They brought in Zach Ertz. That didn't bother them at all. Austin Eckler. That didn't bother them at all. It's a team that is sort of surrounded by a bunch of savvy vets who have had long careers. Tyreek Hill is sort of in that demographic. He's sort of in that market. If they really don't want to pay Terry McLaurin the money that he's probably asking for, why don't you get a wide receiver that is probably of higher value and already under contract? And on the flip side, if you're the Miami Dolphins, what does Terry McLaurin offer you? Locker room presence. Iron Man. He doesn't miss games. He hasn't missed a game in 4 years. He's a great player. You could afford to pay him and probably be okay with it because you're not necessarily nickel and diming your way through free agency with your front office. You could afford and allot yourself that contract. I think this is something that the Dolphins should even consider because there's no way that they're 100% all in happy on Tyreek Hill being involved in that roster. There's no way. 0% chance. I don't care what Mike McDaniel's trying to sell you. I don't care. Tua Tagovailoa told it best. He said our relationship's a work in progress at the beginning of training camp. A candid, honest response when asked about his relationship with Tyreek Hill. Tua said that. And if you could fix that immediately, snap your fingers. You don't have to deal with Tyreek Hill having issues, being problematic with the media, demanding more receptions, calling it, I want to be out of here every 5 seconds when he doesn't have a good game. I think this is a no-brainer. If they're willing to play ball. I think that the Miami Dolphins, it works for both sides. The Dolphins are looking for a little bit of stability, and the Commanders are looking to capitalize on a rookie contract at quarterback, and they're trying to build off of an NFC Championship appearance last season. Now they're turning that Diami Brown, Terry McLaurin wide receiver core into Deebo Samuel and Tyreek Hill. Is there a little bit more risk associated to that? Yes. But is there a lot more upside? Absolutely. That is this to me, if it works, if the financials work, why don't you call for Terry McLaurin? If you have to salary dump or something like that, add that to the conversation. Figure out who's going to pay what. But it's a fairly even enough swap where probably just a pick would nullify the offset. Dolphins would probably be the beneficiary of that. They're giving up the better player. But if the Dolphins are really interested in fixing that locker room, getting a little bit of stability internally, which we haven't necessarily seen them have, why not ship out Tyreek Hill for somebody that doesn't miss games and is an easy person to have around and has seen the worst of it in the NFL? And Tyreek Hill has been an available player. The problem is he's a problematic player to have around because if he's not happy or if he's not playing well, regardless of how the team is playing, he's not happy. You saw that in Kansas City. And you saw that again last year when he's saying, I want to be out. I want to be out. I want to be out. About 3-4 times a season and then backtracking when he plays well and then coming in, coming out. He was a ghost story last year, Tua or not. He was a ghost story. Of course, he had that otherworldly season 2 years ago when the Dolphins had a great year. But 3 years with Miami, is that enough? Dare I say it is. Sell higher. If you think Tyreek Hill is that at 31 years old is going to respond to the level of an elite wide receiver, fine. All right, Dolphins, leave your cards in that basket. But if you wanted to if you were serious about revamping the Dolphins' perception, with all these players coming into the offseason saying that Dolphins locker room, there was no pulse on it. There's no leaders. There's no stability. There's no consistency. Starts with the head coach. It probably trickles down from the general manager and ownership. No vets, no vet presence. People are more worried about Miami than the actual team. Why not go get Terry McLaurin? Not saying he fixes all those problems, but what he does provide is a little bit of stability, a little bit more stability. And Terry McLaurin is obviously he's somebody who's holding out right now, but that's what every player does. Terry McLaurin has been on some bad teams. Bad teams. Can't be much worse than what the Dolphins have to offer right now. I think that makes a lot of sense. Damian Perez, our producer behind the glass today at the City Play Studios. Damian, would you trade Tyreek Hill for Terry McLaurin?
Yeah, Colin, honestly, I think it's a great point. I think if we're looking at it from team needs, you mentioned the Dolphins are getting a great character guy. They're getting leadership. They're getting reliability. He hasn't missed a game in, I believe, 3 seasons. And then from a Washington perspective, you're getting a deep ball threat, and you pair that with a quarterback who's great throwing that deep ball. So it makes sense on both sides. And as you were actually giving out your point, I went ahead and looked at the financials. Terry McLaurin's cap hit 25.5 for next season, and Tyreek Hill's 27.7. So there's not much of a difference there either.
Right. And from that perspective, you probably have to extend Terry McLaurin. That's probably the one part about it.
But he wants around DK Metcalf money, so that's looking at $30 million a year. So it's relatively near that 27.7 number that Tyreek would be for this 2025 season.
And Tyreek Hill is under contract for this season and next. And that base salary, of course, it can be maneuvered and stuff like that, but his cap hit is offloaded. So his cap hit the year after, which will probably fix, is $51 million at the moment as it stands. He's making $30 million next year. All right, well, maybe if you just want to let that contract run its course and then reset after that when he's 32 years old, fine. But if you kind of want to capitalize on Tua's contract, you're going to want to surround it, not just Jalen Waddle. You're going to want to give him something a little bit more than that. I mean, Terry McLaurin, has he shown signs of slowing down? He just had a career year. He's had 13 touchdowns for the first time last year. He played 17 games. He played 17 games the year before, the year before, the year before. 4 years, guys, missed a game. It's 130 targets a game and a division where people hit hard.
And called game in a few of them last year.
Big game play, fine. Got his taste. Maybe he wants to stay. Maybe I know the Commanders want him to stay. But if the Commanders pick up the phone and say all of a sudden Tyreek Hill is within reaching distance, Tyreek Hill is a better player than Terry McLaurin is. He's a better player. That's the bottom line.
More explosive.
What I'm asking for is the Dolphins to willingly downgrade in hopes of some stability. It's an honest downgrade. It is. It's an honest downgrade. Tyreek Hill last year had an off year, and he's still at 81 receptions, about 950 yards and 6 touchdowns. It's not a bad season by any stretch. Bad season for his standards, but that is not a bad season. We're 2 years removed from him having 1,800 yards. He's a better player, but stability, is that worth the player? In my opinion, it is. Because the Dolphins are not devoid of talent. We all know that. They have so much talent.